Here are the divorce papers. I'm taking all the inheritance for myself, Tyler said with a big yawn, as I was greeting our relatives. He chuckled lightly. How can you joke in a moment like this? I asked, shocked. It's no joke. You were Dad's favorite, so I only married you out of obligation. Now that Dad's gone, I'm taking over the company, which means all the inheritance is mine. I don't need you anymore. Even though his father had just passed away, Tyler was only focused on the money. Hearing his words, something snapped inside me. I had put up with him for the sake of my father-in-law, who had been a huge help to me, but I couldn't take it anymore. Fine, I'll give you the divorce, I said, but I was determined to protect the company my father-in-law had left behind and regain my self-respect. This wasn't over. My name is Julie Powell, and I'm about to turn 35. I had to take over Lake Charles Manufacturing when my father died in an accident when I was 27. At the time, I didn't even have time to mourn, and becoming president felt like too much for someone like me, who had just been a regular employee. I nearly gave up several times, but Adam, my father-in-law, stepped in to help me. He was a close friend of my dad's and rushed over as soon as he heard the news. Adam, who ran his own business, taught me everything I needed to know about management. He was a huge help to me and the company. For years after I became president, Adam invited me to dinner and introduced me to his son, Tyler. Julie, this is my son, Tyler. He's managing one of our branches. We're hoping to work more closely with your company, Adam said. Nice to meet you, Tyler said with a bright smile. My father's told me a lot about you. I'm still learning, so I hope you'll guide me. Tyler seemed like a kind and sincere young man, and because he was Adam's son, I trusted him. We quickly built a friendly relationship. Tyler, always smiling, said, I heard you took over your company at such a young age. That's really impressive. What kind of business is it? I told him, our company is called Lake Charles Manufacturing, and we make automobile parts. I'm still learning, but I'm working hard to protect the company my father left behind. I never would have had the confidence to run this company on my own. Lake Charles Manufacturing, huh? That's a new name to me, Tyler said. I know small factories are having a hard time in this economy, but I support you. He then gave me a look that seemed a bit judgmental, but quickly returned to his usual friendly smile. I felt a little uneasy but brushed it off, thinking I was just overthinking things. We kept chatting while having drinks. Over time, Tyler started asking me out more often, and 5 months after we met, he proposed. Julie, let's be together. I've always wanted someone as strong and kind as you. At first, I wasn't sure, but I agreed because of his genuine attitude and my appreciation for Adam. A year later, we got married. During our engagement, Tyler was always caring and kind. One morning, about a month after the wedding, while I was making breakfast, Tyler suddenly asked, So, when are you going to quit your jobs? I paused, knife in hand, and replied, I haven't thought about quitting. Tyler frowned, clearly unhappy. We're married now, right? I'm the president. Even if it's just of a branch. You working makes it look like my income isn't enough, and that's not a good image for my employees. I explained, but this company was my father's legacy. I can't just leave it. Tyler snorted and said, It's just a small-town factory. Compared to big corporations like ours, it's obvious which one matters more. That's when I realized the unease I felt when we first met was because Tyler looked down on my father's company, seeing it as nothing more than a small factory. Tyler, that's not fair. My company has important partners and employees. I can't just abandon it. Partners and employees? Come on, Julie, that's nothing. It's obvious your little factory is nothing compared to even one of our branches, Tyler said dismissively. I was speechless. He clearly didn't understand the responsibility that comes with running a business, no matter its size. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Tyler, the value of a company isn't in how big it is. Even small companies matter. I get it, it's important to you, he said. But be real, there's no way a company run by someone as inexperienced as you is going to survive. Tyler's words were filled with contempt, and his attitude shocked me. My father had always been a kind leader who cared about his employees. I admired him for that. But Tyler was insulting everything my father had worked for. I felt my anger rising, but I tried to hold it in. I barely managed to respond. Tyler, our companies might be different in size, but our employees and partners are important too. It's wrong to look down on them or my company like that. Please stop calling it just a small-town factory. So what? It is just a local business, right? Tyler replied. Our company deals with bigger products like cars and appliances. The difference in scale is obvious. This is why it's tough dealing with beginners, he added with a sigh, clearly frustrated. I'll have breakfast out, he muttered and left for work without waiting for me to respond. Left alone, I stood there in silence, and then the tears I had been holding back began to fall. Wiping them away, I cleaned up the breakfast dishes, feeling a mix of frustration, sadness, and disappointment. My emotions were all tangled up, especially my growing dislike for Tyler. That evening, when I got home feeling exhausted, I was surprised to find Tyler already there. As I opened the front door, the smell of dinner cooking filled the house. I'm home, I said quietly. Tyler peeked out from the kitchen and said, "Welcome back, Julie," in a much warmer tone than he had used that morning. I stood there, confused, and then he began to speak. "I'm sorry about what I said this morning," he said. "I was stressed from work and took it out on you. I shouldn't have done that." He apologized sincerely, and the sight of him saying sorry slowly eased my anger. I tried to make dinner as a peace offering. "I'm not sure how it'll taste, though," Tyler added with an awkward smile. His words made me smile too, despite myself. "Thank you, I really appreciate it," I said, grateful for his effort. We sat down to eat together, and though the food wasn't anything fancy, the fact that he tried made it taste better. "It's good." "Thanks, Tyler," I said softly. Tyler smiled, seeming pleased, and it felt like our argument had ended. But after that, things changed. For a while, Tyler went back to being kind like before, but over time, he became colder. He started making more and more negative comments about my company. A year into our marriage, his attitude became like that of a bossy ruler. One evening, I came home late from work, and Tyler greeted me sarcastically from the sofa. "Finally home, huh? What time do you think it is, Madam President?" "I'm sorry. I had an unexpected meeting." "I'll make dinner right away," I replied apologetically and rushed to the kitchen. Watching me, Tyler scoffed. "A meeting, huh? Were you really working overtime? Is the president of a small-town factory really that busy?" I didn't answer, and just started cooking in silence. Our relationship kept getting worse. Tyler, unhappy with just my formal apologies, confronted me angrily one day and said coldly, "Julie, do you even realize how you're living this life? You act like you're just the president of some small-town factory." Inside, I felt resistance, but I kept quiet because dealing with his company was still important for mine. I stopped arguing, but it didn't mean I wasn't feeling anything. Trying to control my anger, I said in a shaky voice, "I live thanks to your support, and I appreciate it." This irritated Tyler even more. "If you're really thankful, show it, or apologize properly, and I'll forgive you," he snapped. I bit my lip to hold back my anger. "What's wrong? Can't you do it?" "If you can't, I'm fine ending our contract with your company. I can crush it anytime. If you don't apologize, I'll stop doing business with you," Tyler said with a sneer. His words disgusted me, but I knew I had to protect my company. Though I tried to apologize, my pride held me back, and I hesitated. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up," he demanded. Pushed by his words, I finally said, "Please keep doing business with us. I beg you." Seeing me beg, Tyler laughed smugly. "Pathetic. And to think you're supposed to be a president," he said, full of contempt. I felt frustrated, but I had no choice. I gave in to his threat to protect my company and quietly endured the situation. For years into our marriage, Tyler's arrogant behavior got worse, and his criticism of me and my company increased. Every time I came home, I was almost always met with his harsh words. "How late can you be? How long are you going to keep me waiting?" he would say angrily, then go on to complain about me and my company. "You've been working late a lot. What, is your company about to go under? Don't worry, if it fails, I'll hire you after it's ruined. I'll spread the rumor that an incompetent woman destroyed her own business," he sneered. I resented him, but I knew arguing was pointless, so I stayed silent. Tyler didn't like that and only got angrier, complaining even more. You have no idea what it means to be a president. You're supposed to lead a company, but you can't even handle your job or take care of me. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be able to do anything. So, you better try harder to please me, he said, then happily headed to bed. I felt both anger and emptiness after hearing his words, but I quietly cleaned up, exhausted from the daily routine. Living with Tyler had become unbearable, but I held on to the hope that one day I'd be able to turn the tables on him. Until then, I just had to endure. That day came unexpectedly. I got a call saying that Adam, my father-in-law, had fallen seriously ill. I rushed to the hospital and found out he was unconscious and in critical condition. When I entered the room, Tyler was standing there, looking lost. I walked over slowly and gently took Adam's hand. "Father-in-law," I whispered softly. His hand seemed to move slightly, but it might have been just my imagination. The next morning, Adam quietly passed away. On the day of the funeral, I wore my black mourning clothes and quietly entered the venue where many people had gathered. The number of attendees showed how much Adam was loved, and the atmosphere was solemn. I politely greeted each mourner and looked for Tyler. When I spotted him, I couldn't believe what I saw. As the chief mourner, Tyler had a bored expression, occasionally yawning, completely unaware of the disapproving looks from the guests. "Tyler," I called out quietly. He looked at me for a moment, his face changing briefly, but then he quickly lost interest and went back to his indifferent demeanor. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Are you properly greeting the people who came for the funeral?" I asked. Tyler scoffed, pulled out his smartphone, and said coldly, "It's too much hassle. You handle it." I watched in disbelief as he opened a game app. "Tyler, this is your father's funeral," I said, my voice trembling, hoping to get through to him. He ignored me, completely focused on his phone. Occasionally, the sounds from his game cut through the quiet room, and I felt the uncomfortable stares from the attendees. Feeling embarrassed, I gently tried to stop him. "Please, just for today, put the phone away," I pleaded. But Tyler shook off my hand in irritation. "Stop bothering me. Let me do what I want." "I wish this funeral would end already," he muttered. His cold words hit me hard. I couldn't believe this was the same man I had once loved. There was no respect for Adam at all. Somehow, the funeral eventually ended, and as the family gathered for the meal, Tyler spoke up, bored. "Finally, it's over. Here are the divorce papers. I'm taking all the inheritance for myself," he said, laughing smugly. He already had the filled-out papers in his hand. I stared at him in shock. "Are you joking? How could you say that at a time like this?" "It's not a joke. You were Dad's favorite, so I married you out of obligation. Now I'm taking over Dad's company, which means all the inheritance is mine. With him gone, I don't need you anymore." Tyler was focused only on the money, even right after his father had died. "Tyler, this isn't the time to talk about this. Let's wait," I urged. "No, we settle this now. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll terminate all contracts with your company," he said, causing a stir among the relatives. "Are you serious?" someone asked. "Yes, I am. Ending the contracts with your little factory won't affect my company," Tyler replied arrogantly. His words pushed me to my breaking point. I had endured so much for the sake of my father-in-law, but I couldn't take it anymore. "Fine. I'll give you the divorce," I said. Tyler grinned, handed me the papers, and said, "Make sure to submit them soon. You can stay in the house until next week." Then he walked away. Shaking with anger, I gathered only my essentials and checked into a nearby hotel. Since I didn't have kids, it was easier to make a quick exit. The next morning, I was ready to face whatever came next. I arrived at the courthouse as soon as it opened to submit the divorce papers. Right after, I called my secretary to schedule an emergency board meeting in 2 hours. When I reached the office, the board members were already gathered in the conference room. As I entered, they stood up to show respect, and once I sat down, they did too. "I apologize for the short notice, but there's an important decision that needs to be shared," I began, and I noticed someone nervously swallow. "Some of you may have already heard about what happened yesterday," I continued calmly. Effective today, we are ending all business with Powell Precision Engineering. Please review our contracts and make sure there are no penalties for breaking them. Surprised murmurs filled the room. Powell Precision Engineering had been a valuable partner, but it was also run by Tyler. After the discussions were wrapped up and the board members left, I walked over to the window, took a deep breath, and solidified my next step. Let's move forward, I said to myself. I called my secretary and gave her instructions. Prepare a notice to officially end our dealings with Powell Precision Engineering. Also, inform my ex-husband and schedule a meeting for 4 p.m. After my secretary left, I looked out the window again and whispered, "Are you ready? This is just the start." Smiling, I headed over to Powell Precision Engineering at 3:30 p.m., adjusting my suit and taking a deep breath. When I gave my name at reception, the receptionist replied politely, "Miss Cooper, you have a 4 p.m. appointment. Please wait a moment." A young woman, clearly Tyler's secretary, quickly came to greet me and led me to the top floor. My heart was beating faster, but I kept a calm face. Once we arrived, she knocked lightly on a large door. It opened to reveal Tyler sitting in a big chair behind his desk in the spacious office. "What do you want? Is the divorce finalized? Or are you here asking for money?" Tyler sneered, dripping with his usual arrogance. "I guess running a small-town factory gives you too much free time. There were no financial arrangements when we split, so he thought I was there to ask for something." I quietly sat down, took a moment to steady myself, and then spoke calmly. "It's been a while, President Powell. I'm here to talk business." "What's with the cold attitude?" he asked, clearly annoyed. Smiling slightly, I slowly pulled a document from my bag. "I've come to deliver this," I said. "As of today, we are ending all business with your company." I spoke calmly, and Tyler's face changed color, freezing for a moment. Then he laughed, trying to brush it off. "You're joking, right? Your company is cutting ties with us? It's just a small-town factory, isn't it?" Tyler still didn't seem to understand what was happening. "In fact," I said, "Powell Precision Engineering's business with Lake Charles Manufacturing accounts for 55% of your revenue. This will seriously affect your company." He stared at me in disbelief. "You're lying. I thought Lake Charles Manufacturing was just a small-town factory." "You didn't know, did you? Lake Charles Manufacturing employs 10,000 people and has annual revenue of $3 billion. That's ridiculous." Tyler started to argue, but his secretary whispered something in his ear, and his face turned pale. He finally realized the impact this would have on his company. I couldn't help but smile a little. But you never told me any of this." "I thought it was just a small company," he stammered. "You assumed," I said. "Remember, you were the one who said ending business with Lake Charles Manufacturing wouldn't affect your company." I calmly repeated his own words, making it clear how much he had misjudged the situation. The loss of our business could ruin his company, and he knew it now. "Wait, I just misunderstood. I thought Lake Charles Manufacturing was a small operation," he said, trying to backtrack. "And if you're doing so well, why do you always dress so simply?" "You're joking, right, Julies?" Tyler, who had always been so confident, now sounded desperate. "You still don't get it, do you?" I sighed and looked him in the eye. "I'm following my father's teachings. He never believed in showing off wealth because he understood the risks that come with it. That's why I live modestly. You, on the other hand, waste money without thinking." I smiled softly as Tyler's face flushed with anger and embarrassment, and he fell silent. "Just because we're divorced doesn't mean I wanted to end business with Powell Precision Engineering," I continued. "It's been profitable for us. But lately, there have been issues, quality problems, delayed deliveries." I paused and looked straight at him. "And more importantly, your lack of moral responsibility. You ignored your duties as the chief mourner at your father's funeral, and right in front of your relatives, you handed me divorce papers, claiming all the inheritance is mine." "I was drunk," he said weakly. "I was upset about my father's death, and I had a few drinks before the funeral. It wasn't intentional." "For 4 years, you've looked down on me," I said. "You never respected my work, constantly criticizing and insulting me. And yesterday you showed your true self." If that wasn't who you really are, then who is? Tyler sat there in silence, unable to respond. Working with someone who lacks basic ethics is a risk for Lake Charles Manufacturing, I said firmly. That's why we're ending our business relationship. Julie, please reconsider, Tyler begged, his voice now weak. Our company will go under. I responded with a cold smile. Your company will be fine, right? I remember you always said, I can buy it out any time if I really wanted to. Tyler's face went pale. He probably never thought his own words would come back to haunt him like this. You bastard, he muttered, standing up and angrily swinging his arm toward me. But he stopped mid-swing. Do you really want to try hitting me? Go ahead. If you use violence, it'll only hurt the reputation of Powell Precision Engineering. Attacking the female president of Lake Charles Manufacturing would be even worse for you, I said calmly. Tyler's hand trembled with rage, but he slowly lowered it. Damn it, he muttered. This is goodbye. Farewell, I said, leaving the room as I heard Tyler's distant shouts behind me. 5 months passed since Lake Charles Manufacturing ended its partnership with Powell Precision Engineering. During that time, Tyler's company started to fall apart. At first, Tyler tried to save his business, looking for new partners and encouraging his employees. But when the news of our termination spread, the company's reputation took a serious hit. 3 months later, major clients began canceling their contracts one after another. Tyler even tried offering desperate deals, which only made things worse. 5 months in, Powell Precision Engineering was struggling financially. Employee payments were delayed, and staff started resigning or joining other companies. Bankruptcy seemed inevitable. One day, I got a phone call. Hello, Julie, said a weak, raspy voice. I immediately recognized it as Tyler. What is it? I asked coolly. Please, I need to talk to you in person, he said, sounding desperate. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a plea for help. All right. Let's meet tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Lake Charles Manufacturing, I said, and after hanging up, I sighed deeply. I had already made up my mind about what I needed to do. The next day, Tyler showed up 20 minutes early. He was a shell of his former self, wearing a shabby suit, unshaven, with red, tired eyes. When I entered the reception room, he quickly stood up. Julie, thank you. I'm really glad to see you, he said, his voice shaking. Please, I'm begging you to resume business with Powell Precision Engineering. Why? I asked coldly. Tyler looked startled for a moment, but then spoke with desperation. My company is about to collapse. I can't even pay my employees, and the pressure from creditors is getting worse every day. That's the result of your own management decisions, I replied, showing no sympathy. His face turned even paler. Suddenly, he dropped to his knees and bowed deeply, pleading, Please, just give me one more chance. The sight of him, once so arrogant, now humbled and begging, was pitiful. Tyler, once full of pride, was now on the ground, asking for forgiveness. I called his name, and Tyler briefly lifted his head, showing a hint of hope. But I continued, I'm sorry, but there is no second chance. My cold words hit him hard, and I saw the hope in his eyes turn into despair. But Julie? Tyler's voice trembled as he tried to plead again. I cut him off. Enough. You belittled me for 4 years, even on the day of your father's funeral. You crushed my feelings. There's no sympathy left for you. Tyler lowered his head to the floor once more, begging for pity. I've already apologized for that. Please, this isn't for me. It's for the employees. My resolve was firm. Apologies couldn't undo the damage he had caused, nor the attitudes that led to it. This wasn't just about business. It was about respect and consequences. If you had truly cared about your employees, it wouldn't have come to this. You only looked out for yourself, I said. Tyler's shoulders shook as he pleaded tearfully, Please, don't abandon me. I calmly checked the time and said, It's time now, President Powell. Please leave for today. At that moment, my secretary entered the room. She gently helped Tyler up and wiped his tear-streaked face as she led him out. Around noon, I went down to the lobby, where Tyler was still standing, as if he wanted to say something. Before he could speak, a third person appeared. President, May I have a moment of your time? The person asked quietly. Hearing the voice, Tyler fell to his knees in shock. Noah? What's going on? Why are you here? Noah, one of Tyler's employees, briefly glanced at Tyler, then focused on me. President, can I have a little of your time? He asked. Of course, let's discuss this in the conference room, I replied, moving forward before Tyler could react. In a panic, Tyler tried to grab my arm. Wait, Julie, what is this about? Why is my employee here? But before he could touch me, security stepped in. Traitor. Noah, you betrayed me, Tyler shouted. Noah responded calmly, No, Powell. You betrayed yourself. You only cared about your own interests and ignored your employees. At that, Tyler's face turned completely pale. Noah nodded toward me, and we left the area, Tyler's desperate screams echoing behind us. I didn't look back. Despite ending business with Powell Precision Engineering, Lake Charles Manufacturing continued to thrive. We hired new talent, entered new markets, and grew stronger. Our workforce grew to over 13,500 employees, and our market share expanded, making us a major player in the USA economy. I was recognized for our success and awarded CEO of the Year, gaining attention as a female leader in the industry. 6 years later, in the fall, our company stood even taller, with a bright future ahead. I attended the opening ceremony of Lake Charles Manufacturing's new headquarters. From the top floor of the building, I looked out over the wide view of Miami, reflecting on the journey that brought us here. In my speech, I ended with, Adversity makes us stronger. We have the strength to overcome any challenge. Lake Charles Manufacturing will keep moving forward. The crowd applauded loudly, and it resonated deeply within me. Tyler's life had taken a very different path. Driven by greed, he made reckless financial decisions, personally guaranteeing corporate bonds and misusing funds. His poor investment choices failed, and his involvement in fraud only added to his growing debts, which eventually led to the collapse of his company. It's said his total debt exceeded $150 million. Even after stepping down as president, creditors chased him, and he lived a life constantly burdened by debt. Although he filed for bankruptcy, his past extravagance backfired, and he was forced to continue making payments. His payments were often late, and the interest made his debt grow even larger. Whether he will ever pay it all off is uncertain. One day, I happened to see him working part-time at a local supermarket. He looked much older than when I last saw him, with thinning hair and a blank expression. It was a stark contrast to the man he used to be. Next to him, a magazine cover featured the headline, Lake Charles Manufacturing President among the top 15 in annual income, while he quietly stocked shelves. Seeing him like that, I felt a mix of emotions. The man who once looked down on me was now in such a tough spot. I looked away and left the store without saying a word. My personal life took a new turn 4 years ago when I met a wonderful man. We got married at the end of last year, and he has been incredibly supportive of my career, always standing by my decisions. We have built a strong and loving relationship where we support each other and grow together. Now, we are looking forward to welcoming a new life into our family. I'm expecting a baby next spring, which will be a big change for me as I take on the role of a mother. While I still have some worries about balancing work and home life, I feel confident that with the help of my family, friends, and colleagues, I will overcome any challenges. I'm excited to see how much I will grow in the next year, and I'm committed to working hard to achieve the goals I've set for myself, building a fulfilling future. As I stood against the backdrop of Miami, I quietly smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and hope. Closing my eyes, I spoke to my late father in my heart. Dad, the vision you had for the company, I've made it a reality.